All right, so like I said, the x-intercept, that's the point at which we are intersecting the x-axis. So it's when y is going to be equal to 0. Okay, and we already know about the y-axis. That's the point at which we cross over, or I'm sorry, the y-intercept is the point we cross over the y-axis. So if I were to have just a nice, lovely little grid, it's our little coordinate plane. If I happen to cross the x-axis, oh, do I not have a green highlighter? Oh, yes, I do. Maybe I cross the x-axis over here, and then I'm crossing the y-axis maybe here. And then that would create a nice, lovely line. Okay, so this again is my x-intercept when y is equal to 0. And this is my y-intercept when x is equal to 0. So we can use our intercepts as points to graph. As long as we've got 2 points graphed, that can create a line for us. So all you need are 2 points. So the x-intercept and the y-intercept happen to be 2 points. So let's take a look at an example. So let's say that we have y is equal to 2/3 x minus 2. And I want to go ahead and I want to state and graph the intercepts. I want to state and graph both of the intercepts. Well, right off the bat, the easiest one, because of the fact that it's in slope-intercept form, which intercept do I know right off the bat? The y-intercept, right? Just because of the way that it's written, I know what the y-intercept is. Y is equal to 2/3 x minus 2. My y-intercept is that negative 2. But now I need to write it as a point. So what's the point going to be? 0, negative 2. So we have 0, negative 2. Okay, now for the x-intercept, when we're talking about the x-intercept, we're going to plug in y equaling 0. So we're going to replace y with a 0. So instead of y equaling 2/3 x minus 2, it's going to be 0 equals 2/3 x minus 2. And then we just solve. Who can raise their hand and tell us what are we going to do first to solve? Heaven? Add 2 to both sides. Very good. So we would add 2 and add 2. So that's going to give us a positive 2 is now equal to 2/3 x. What's the next step to solving? Grant?
Divide 2 by 2/3 x.
Very good. So we're going to divide both sides by 2/3. Or you could multiply both sides by the reciprocal, which would be 3/2. So if we do 2 divided by 2/3, or 2 times 3/2, what would that give us? 3. So x is going to be equal to 3. So my x-intercept is a positive 3 when y is equal to 0. So now I have both of my points. All I have to do is graph them. So that's when you're going to take your little grid Like I said, I would go ahead and just state, hey, this first one, that's graph number 1. My y-intercept was at 0, -2, so if I start at the origin, I'm going to go down 2 points. My x-intercept was at 3, 0, so that means starting at the origin, I'm going to go right 3. And then, of course, like always, you want to have a straight edge to connect them. Anybody want to tell me what the slope is of this? What is it, Joshua? 2/3. Positive or negative? Positive, right? This is a positive slope. Looking at the direction right off the bat, you should be able to tell it's positive. The rise happens to be a 2 over a run of 3. We're going to increase by 2 and run 3. Then increase by 2, run 3. Increase by 2, run 3. Okay, and the same thing can be said in the reverse. You could go backwards. You could go down 2, to the left 3, so -2, -3, -2, -3, and it'll still take you to the same point. Remember, slope is direction. Tells you how to get from one point to the next. I want you guys to try one of the problems on your own. Can I remove the graph?
Yes.
Okay. If you happen to need it later, you can always go online to the video. Fast forward to that problem. All right, example 2. Y is equal to -½ x plus 5. Y equals -½ x plus 5. I want you guys to go ahead and solve for the y and the x-intercept and then graph it. Under there, please. Thank you. You'll find out if it's correct after I go over it, right? Sure. All right, who can raise their hand and tell me what is the y-intercept? Josh? Got to state it as a point. 0, 5. The y-intercept is going to be 0, 5. Ooh, just wrote on my hand. So here's our y-intercept. That's at 0, 5. Okay, now let's solve for the x-intercept. Who can tell me what they got for the x-intercept? Jordan?
Let's see,
10, 0. Very good. So if you have the equation y is equal to negative half x plus 5, again, you are going to replace that y with what value? 0. So it's going to be 0 is equal to negative half x plus 5. The first thing that you would need to do is go ahead and subtract a 5 from both sides. That's going to give you a negative 5 is now equal to a negative half x. And then the last step is to divide both sides by a negative half or multiply by a negative 2. Both of them are the same idea. Negative 5 divided by a negative half, or negative 5 times negative 2, is going to give you a positive 10. So you get x is equal to 10. So that means your x-intercept is at the point 10, 0. Okay, then you would graph it. So graphically speaking, if you're looking at example 2, the y-intercept is at 0, positive 5. The x-intercept is at 10, positive 0, or positive 10, 0. And then just connect them. What about the slope? Who can tell me what is the slope going to be? Again, Heaven? Negative half, right? You should be double checking on here because we already know our slope from our equation, negative 1 over 2. We should be checking to make sure that it's the same, right? That means that we would increase by 1 and go to the left by 2. Increase by 1, go to the left by 2. Increase by 1, go to the left by 2. We want to double check to make sure we've graphed it correctly because our slope is supposed to be a negative half. Okay. Let's take a look at another example. This time, instead of having them already in slope-intercept form, you're going to have them in standard form. So if you have an equation already written in standard form, so if we have 4x minus 3y is equal to 24. 4x minus 3y is equal to 24. And we're wanting to solve for the different intercepts. It's really, really simple. If I write my equation in two different spots, so I wanted to do my x-intercept on one side, my y-intercept on another side. So I've got 4x minus 3y is equal to 24. When I'm solving for my x-intercept, which value is going to disappear? The y. If I'm solving for x, that means y is what value? 0. If I'm solving for my x, that means that y is going to be equal to 0. Well, if I plug a 0 in here, what's going to happen to this? It's going to become what? A 0, because a negative 3 times 0 is just 0, right? So it's like this value right here, this minus 3y, it disappears. It's completely gone. So now I'm left with just 4x is equal to 24, and I solve. That y has completely disappeared if I'm trying to solve for the x-intercept. So I'm dividing both sides by 4, and I find that x is going to be equal to 6, when y is equal to 0. So my x-intercept is 6, 0. Well, the same thing happens here. When I'm solving for my y-intercept, my x is going to be equal to 0. So do I have a 4x anymore? No, because what's 4 times x? 0. I don't have to write that 0 in, do I? So it's like 4x has completely disappeared. So now what I'm left with is a negative 3y is equal to 24. And then I solve. I divide both sides by negative 3. And what will y equal? Negative 8. So I have the y-intercept at 0, negative 8. See how easy that is? You don't have to sit there and rewrite the equation into slope-intercept form. You can easily just substitute zeros in for your variables, your alternate variables, to solve for your different intercepts. Now, do we know the slope from here? No, but we can go ahead and plot the points and identify the slope from the graph. So let's go ahead and plot 6, 0, and 0, negative 8. So this is example number 3. 6, 0, that's my x-intercept. 0, negative 8, that's my y-intercept. And then connect them. All right, once I've got it graphed, identifying the slope, the first thing I should identify, is it positive or negative? Positive. Who can tell me what's the slope going to be? Colin? 4 over 3. Very good. You would rise by 4 and run by 3. It would take you to the next point on the graph. Rise 4, run 3 takes you to another point on the graph. Rise 4, run 3 takes you to another point on the graph. Okay? So it's a positive slope of 4 over 3. And remember, those directions mean you would go up and to the right, or the direct opposite, down and to the left. Right? Because a negative over a negative is still a positive. All right, I'm going to have you do one more example on your own. Let's say we have a negative 5x minus 2y is equal to 10. Where am I signing? Go ahead and do that one on your own. right, who can tell me what is the x-intercept going to be? Elijah?
-2, 0.
-2, 0. Very good. What about the y-intercept? Lena? 0, -5. Correct. Okay, so let's take a look at it real quickly. If we have -5x minus 2y is equal to 10, when we are solving for the x-intercept, that means y is going to disappear. So we'd be left with -5x is equal to 10. You would then divide both sides by -5. And you would get that x is equal to -2. So your x-intercept is at -2, 0. And then same thing for doing the y-intercept. -5x minus 2y is equal to 10. This time the x's would disappear. So you're left with a -2y is equal to 10. You would then divide both sides by -2 to get that y is going to be equal to -5. So that means your y-intercept happens to be at 0, -5. Okay, then graphing it. So if we take a look at our last example's graph, our x-intercept is at -2, 0. Our y-intercept is at 0, -5. And then connect them. Oops. And who can raise their hand and tell me what is the slope? First of all, is it a positive or negative? Negative. So I'm going to right off the bat write a negative for my slope. And then what is the actual value for the slope? Heaven? Not over 1. Grant?
-5 over 2.
-5 over 2. Right? -5 over 2. So this means that you're either going to go down and then to the right, or you're going to go up and to the left. Those are the directions because of the fact that we're dealing with a negative slope. Negative slope means the directions are down right, up left. One of them's positive, one of them's negative. Any questions? Okay, so your homework tonight, you're going to be getting, don't, you stop. Do not go, Hey, shh. I can make it longer. So I've already printed out the pages, but I'm letting you know it's on page 895 in the books, but I printed them out for you, so it starts on page 895. You're going to be completing problems 1 through 7 all, and then 9 through 18 all. 1 through 7 all, 9 through 18 all. If it's a graph, make sure you graph stuff. Okay? Make sure you answer every component to the questions that they're asking. But get that written down.